So about 6 years ago, I was following this guy on the internet who was doing YouTube videos, which was kind of new at the time. I was fascinated by what he had to say. And then fast forward a few months later, I'm at a conference in California, and who do I see but the guy I saw on YouTube? And for me, he was kind of a movie star. It was kind of cool. Next thing I know, I'm in a men's circle with him, and we're sharing the deepest truths of our lives, and getting coaching from a mutual friend of ours, Rich Litfin, and just kind of learning our next chapters. So this has been a 6-year friendship and journey that I want to share John Morgan with you. John is a champion coach for entrepreneurs, artists, coaches, anybody who's actually trying to create anything in the world. Comes from the real estate industry and property investment. So he's a smart guy, web development, had a bunch of businesses, but now he's probably one of the top coaches in the world and one of the few people I would even be willing to give my money to coach me. But John and I often sit over a cup of coffee and talk about the meaning of life. So I wanted to share this man with you on the podcast. John, thanks for being on the podcast with me.
Oh, you're welcome, Mark. Thank you so much for having me here.
We were talking about subject matter to talk about on the podcast. Usually somebody has a book to hawk or a specific expertise that they have. And for me, it's who you be that I want to share with the people who listen to this podcast.
Thank you.
A lot of what I teach, I've stolen from you.
Perfect.
And I know where you've stolen your stuff from, right? And they tell two friends and they tell two friends. But I want to go back to, you just did, last week you said you went on a weekend of solitude. And one of the things I love about you is if there's anybody who works harder on their self-development, on their finding their true purpose, essence, mission, beingness, it's you. So you went off and left your beautiful wife and beautiful son to go be by yourself.
Yeah.
What did you get out of that weekend?
A lot of struggle. It was the first time I've done it while also water fasting. I mean, and the thing is, I say that kind of tongue in cheek because it was one of the more challenging weekends, but what I get out of them is never really obvious right away. It's starting to become clear now as the weeks start to roll by. Let me first say about what I go into them.
That's what I was going to say. So why'd you go in the first place?
Yeah, why I went into it in the first place is whenever I feel that I'm kind of operating on just high energy autopilot, a lot of thinking going on, when I can see behaviors that are reactive coming out of me, where my ability to witness my behavior is more in hindsight than it is in the present moment, I'm like, okay, I have lost my connection to something greater than me. I've lost my capacity to be with what I'm experiencing in my body and to have some agency between like my reactivity, you know what I mean? So of course a mindfulness practice in the morning helps me to maintain that. But if I've fallen off that, getting back into that mindfulness practice, takes a lot of energy and force. And so I kind of just like to go just switch off. Sometimes just for an afternoon, I'll go out to the lake near us here in LA, or but when it's really been a while and I feel like I need some space, it's like I'm just going to go. I just book an Airbnb in the desert for 1 night, 2 nights, 3 nights, and just go and sit. Don't turn my phone on, just be there. And I kind of have to like burn off all that activity. It's got a half-life to it, but so does stillness. So if you sit for a while, that the mind settles and the mind becomes still, and you go back and that stillness comes with you when you return. And then if you don't maintain it, you kind of, so I'd see it as not like something's broken, but that's just perfect oscillation, a little bit of stillness. And then I like to be in the active world. And then when it gets too much, to go the other way. So it's like a pendulum. So
I'm going to challenge you now. So now you've just met someone who just walked out of a big glass building and they're in a Hugo Boss suit, or it's a woman. She's in her heels and she's ready to go. She's got a briefcase, and you're saying the same exact story, and you want to impart. They ask you, so you went on a weekend. What'd you get out of it? What'd you do? What words how would you explain to them in language that they could understand what you just did?
Yeah. No, I've had that conversation. So thanks for asking, because it's like really easy to just speak to you where I know what you're listening to and you can hear. But I'm thinking of a couple of friends that have asked, so why did you do that? Like kind of perplexed, like what was that? What was that about? And what I'll say is that like so much of a person's life and living can be as a result of what they think they should be doing, which is just the idea is that everybody around them is doing, and we get caught up in these wheels. Like, you ever feel like you're on a wheel, like a hamster in a cage, and you're just doing and doing and doing, and we don't actually know anymore what actually matters to us. Because we think if we're doing it, that means it matters to us. But actually, if we slow down and we just take a break, like when you go on vacation and you reflect, it's really a chance to be able to look at my life from afar and be like, is how I'm living actually true for me? Because if we get too far down that path, then we start to feel broken or drained out or sad or depressed or something. And so for me, it's just it's a way to reflect on myself and my life and what's happening. That would be the beginning of a conversation about a deeper internal experience.
You know, and that dovetails to exactly the premise and the sentence that came to me that created this whole mastering midlife thing, which is the drives and motivations that got us successful in the first place start to crack at some points. They start to wane, they start to turn on us. And what you're talking about is that automatic thing, that drivenness that got you to today, right, is not going to sustain you. And we try and hold on to that.
Right.
But, you know, midlife is when that little voice inside says, you know, authenticity, something different, something's got to change. You know, you got to look at these demons from childhood. You got to, you know, and what you and I do when we sit on a cushion in the morning or when we go off and be silent is spend a lot of time separating from that automatic behavior.
Yeah, the wheat from the chaff. A couple of my clients asked me what my structure was for my retreat because they want to do one too. And I basically use that metaphor. I said, it's like, for me, I shared the structure. Then I just said, like, for me, it's really a practice or it's not even a practice, not like I'm doing anything, but it's a learning how to separate the wheat of intuition and spirit and truth from the chaff of like just impulsive, habitual thinking. Right. And that you can't do that without just slowing down and actually listening to all of it and asking that question. Is this something that's really deeply true in my heart? Or is this just something that I thought was true? Can I share a great example of something recently that I've seen in myself?
That's exactly why you're here. Please do.
Okay, cool. So some of the places that I'm most intrigued in looking right now is the places where things are working well for me. Because we always tend to like, oh, if it's not working, then I should work on that. But I'm become really skeptical of the places where things are working well for me. And when I say they're working well, I mean, I'm creating functional outcomes in that area, like ticking the box. Maybe I'm making money, or maybe things in the house are working well. So one of the places that things were working well was I never cooked. I worked out that like I could get where I can buy nice food, how I can have nice food made and delivered to me. I married a wonderful woman who loves to cook. And so it just worked. And so the reason that I started to look in this area was because my wife would love me to cook for her. And for 9 years, I kind of just haven't, and I do everything else. But it's like, there's always that possibility. And so I started to look at it, and what I have found through challenging the idea that I don't cook and having it be like, what if I did cook? Not because it's a problem, but just because it's an idea as a possibility. What I found is that the reason I wasn't cooking wasn't just because I didn't need to or I wasn't into it. I was actually shit fucking scared of being in the kitchen, because I saw the kitchen as a place where you could succeed or fail. And that was a context where I could get it wrong. And it was in a very intimate place because it was at home with family, where that hurts a lot to get it wrong there. And so I didn't realize it built up all of these functional ways of operating in my life around food and cooking that were actually a way of avoiding the possibility of not being lovable. And so now I'm growing in that place, but it's only because I've been exploring an area where things were working, quote unquote, well. And therefore I'm finding more truth in me. I'm becoming more coherent, more relaxed on the inside as I grow through these fears.
If I extrapolate from that, the thought, you know, like the simple thought of going into the kitchen, because you didn't think you were scared of being in
I didn't know I was,
right?
Yeah. Right.
You didn't, you know, I even say that in Only Tens. I was just rereading Only Tens about fear. And It was like, there are so many things I didn't do because I said, I just don't want to, I just don't need to, I just don't have to. And then when I actually slowed down to think about it, I was scared.
Yes.
And now you're talking about cooking, you're going into the kitchen and you're like, holy shit, me not cooking is me avoiding feeling not lovable.
Yeah. I had no idea.
That equation.
Because I built up so many effective functional ways that I wasn't even in touch with the avoidance anymore. And this is what happens in society too. Like, so many people get on a path in life that's the right path, you know, and then they're just on that path, and maybe they're a doctor or they're a lawyer, and this is what they've done because they thought that was the right thing to do, and now they've ticking all the boxes, and they're good at it, and that being good at it and it working blinds them from the fact that they're actually doing that because they were afraid to do what they really want to do. So there's no way that they could even be in contact with it, and you're so caught up in this until you get to the age that we're at now, when it's like magma beneath the surface, and eventually this thing's going to pop. And if you don't actually pay attention to it, it will come out in a way that creates crises in your life. Like it'll manifest as relationship issues, or just, you know, depression, or, you know, blowing all your money on something crazy, whatever.
You just answered the question I didn't ask.
Okay.
And I never thought of it that way. When I talk about the drives and motivations, and you just made it like magma. Like we think we have everything all together, and there's this lava going on underneath, and there's shifting going on underneath. We don't even know it, and it's going to blow at some time.
Oh yeah.
And the question I wanted to ask that you answered was, my life is working. Why the fuck should I care about any of this stuff? Why should I go into the kitchen or my version of that and really look for things that aren't working? I have enough shit to check on, you know, and deal with, right? And then when you just talked about that magma, the reason that you need to do that is because this stuff is going to show up anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. The life working is the thing that blinds us from it not working on the inside. If our orientation is about does everything working in my life, then does that mean you'll die happy? Does that mean you're fulfilled? Not necessarily. And I think a lot of the times that we're actually this external orientation where is everything working out there is a way of disassociating and unfortunately blinding ourselves from it, whether it's working or not working on the inside. And for some reason, I've always had a really high bar for things also working on the inside. Of course, it doesn't mean I'm always on it. I have my blind spots, but I've been interested in that since a young age. I've had the idea, I don't know where I got it, that I don't have to do anything. And the other side of that is like, well, what do I want to do? So I've had some attention on that. Doesn't mean I don't have my own little crises. I mean, I'm growing my hair out right now. I just had this realization that I had the same haircut for 30 years. It's like, okay, now I'm like getting long hair. It's like a little mini, little mini crisis, but it's a way of exploring new things too.
So you say you recently posted, happiness is nothing.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So I've been reflecting, well, the idea really is that nothingness, being nothing, having no thoughts in our minds, stillness is where peace and calm comes from. It's where we're connected with what's true. This is what we're talking about. And when we're connected with what's true, when our mind is calm and still, when we know what we actually really do value and care about, we're happy. And so that's what I'm basically saying. It was also a play on the words, impossible is nothing, from Muhammad Ali. But it's really about the idea when we access this nothingness inside of us, happiness is our natural state that just shows up and emerges. But, I like to play with language and I like to share things in the world that get people thinking about possibilities. Not always so direct, here it is, like here's the candy and go eat it. It's like, here's something that this part of me feels interesting. And there's something in this, but I have to think about it. I have to pay attention. I have to hang with it. I'm a philosopher really at the core, and I like people to really reflect on these things that they assume that are true that may be getting in their way.
What does it mean that you're a philosopher at the core?
It means that one of my primary interests in life since I was at a young age is like, what if? New possibilities, different ways of seeing the world that will then create my experience. And so I didn't study philosophy academically, but I've always been interested in how do things work? Why do they work? I studied physics and math, so I kind of came into it that way. And why am I interested in that? Because of the experience that it creates for me. From an academic perspective, I think we think about philosophy as like the pursuit of the absolute truth. Whereas I'm actually much more interested in what is the philosophy that is going to actually create my experience of life that's most fulfilling. And so I'm a philosopher with the end result or the means or the goal of creating an experience more so than like accessing what the truth is out there.
I think those are the questions worth answering. If anybody asks my opinion of any of this, like I'll be on somebody else's podcast and they'll be like, what is the meaning of life? And my answer is, what do you want it to be? Right? Like, so, but lost my train of thought with that, as I always do when I talk with you, which is why it's so good to talk to you. One of the problems I have one of the challenges I have in bringing my work out to the public and
Mm-hmm.
publishing is I'm always have one foot in rubber meets the road,
Mm-hmm.
practical. If I'm having trouble in my marriage, how do we unravel that? I
Mm-hmm.
have people in my life who have addictions. What do I do with that?
Mm-hmm.
Then I have the other side of me that's, that where you and I connect, and me and Teo connect, and me and Tony connect,
Mm-hmm.
where we talk about um, the real unseen things that are moving in life that are affecting all the things that we're trying to fix with the
Mm-hmm.
tools.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I straddle between those two things, and I
Mm-hmm.
have conversations on this podcast, both practical and then intangible.
Mm-hmm.
They're tangible for me and you. And then I wonder how much of it translates into the world,
Mm-hmm.
because it's an existential crisis as what I call quote unquote a coach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can give people exercises, give people things to do, give people challenges. But then what I know, what's really going to make a difference and make a change to them, is
Mm.
for them to learn about themselves, to
Yes.
go inward, right? To
Mm.
go into the kitchen if they're scared, if they're not going into the kitchen, and go cook and find out
Yeah.
what's interesting.
Yeah.
Right. One of the exercises I have one of my clients doing is, I want you to go out and I want you to go do something for 3 people that
Mm-hmm.
they will never forget for the rest of their lives.
Mm.
Right. So because I want him to experience that connection,
Mm-hmm.
that thing. He's like, what does that have to do with my business?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I can't explain to him what it has to do with his business.
Why not?
Six months from now, he'll know what it has
I
to
bet,
do with his
I,
business.
I bet that you can explain it though, because you know what it has to do with his business.
So you explain to me, because I know what I told him. What I told him was, you as the CEO, you said you wanted to be connected to your people. You wanted to
Yeah.
be a leader who is connected to his people,
That's a great
right?
answer.
So, but that's an intellectual answer for someone who's not deeply connected to his people.
Well, that's what the exercise is there for, right?
Right.
To bring it from intellect down into the experience.
Correct.
So I just don't buy into the idea that the rubber meeting the road thing is separate from these philosophies and conceptualizations. I am like a real big stand for the value of philosophy. I actually think that the challenge is that people hold them as separate. One of my declarations is, I am that I live by asking and listening. And I mean that when I ask you a question, I'm doing it so that I can listen to your answer, so that I can understand you. But I also mean it in
Mm.
a spiritual sense, where I am that I ask for guidance from something greater than me. I go to the desert and I ask, and then I listen inwardly. That's a very spiritual kind of thing. But to me, it's like, it's just one concept. This idea of different between inside and outside. It's like, the less we have the idea that there's a separation between the two, the more this problem goes away. And so, not that I'm not in this conversation like you're talking about all the time with my clients, because it's like, well, how do we make this pragmatic when I'm talking about the philosophical side, or when I'm talking about the pragmatic side? It's like, well, there's something deeper here. Yeah, there is. But I guess what I'm saying is, I come from a place where they're the same, as a way of helping them to bridge them.
Totally.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons why you're one of the people that I pay attention to
Mm.
constantly, because I am either artificially, or because it's my skill, walking that line.
Yes, you
Right.
are.
I'm in glass
Yeah.
buildings all the time.
Yeah.
And if I say, let's work on your intuition, people
Right.
will just kind of roll their eyes at me. But if I
Right.
say, what is your gut saying about that?
Yeah.
Right. Very different thing. And
Yeah, you have to, of course, that's great pacing. You find a language that they can hear.
so I spend a lot of time with that, but I also wondered, and this is just over time, how you become more and more authentic, more and more real, more and more less embarrassed for me about who I am and what I actually know, see, and experience in the world. Right.
Mm.
So I use you as an example of
Mm.
someone who is just out in the world, unvarnished,
Yeah.
musing in public.
Well, it's interesting because, this is like, it's not one thing or the other, because I have the opposite. When I look at you, I'm like, man, this guy just knows how to use language and create in ways that people can actually hear him. And like the way you do your book, it's like, boom, all of a sudden it's a bestseller. The way you do your podcast, like you just nail the language, you know how to articulate and communicate so people can understand you. When I watched the little clip of your public talk, you understand how to communicate so people can hear you. I recently did the Wealth Dynamics profile by Roger Hamilton. And so I came out really heavy in like the creator profile. And the
Mm,
creator profile is oriented towards the heavens, which basically means that they're not really paying attention to sensory input. They're paying attention to what is their understanding, their experience, and they're just pouring that out of
mm.
themselves. And so somebody that is going to have their pulse on what people are actually thinking and feeling and having is like, that's a different type of orientation. And so there's value in that too. And I think we need all of us in the world. Like if it was everybody like me, it's like nobody's even paying attention to each other. Not to say that when I'm with a person, I'm not with them, but my attention on how something can be articulated so that the most people will hear it is not as high as it could be, or other people might have it. And I think, you know, there's value in both. This is why us having a
Totally.
conversation is great.
No, and you know, by the way, to you know, whoever's in the car listening to us, this is the kind of conversations we have, and I grow so much in comparing, contrasting, and learning from John. And you know, you can do that in your life. Is really, who are you? What do you want to do in the world? And for me, what I want to do in the world is I
Mm,
want to bring the unknowable, the intangible, the more real into
mm,
the world of business, in the world of
mm,
family, in the world of life. And you know, people have been trying to do this for thousands and thousands of years, right? How do we take what Buddha and Jesus and all these, you know, brilliant transcendent people brought to us, and how do
mm,
we actually bring it into our everyday lives? And I
mm,
spend every day wrestling with that in my conversations with everybody. And that's
mm,
why I love having people like you in my life to
mm.
help me wrestle with this.
Yeah.
I'm going to, you know, this afternoon, I'm going to be moderating a business talk at a business club.
Mm.
And I'm going to infuse what we talk about here in there because it matters.
Yeah, I mean, in what you're doing, I mean, it's just awesome because you're going into an existing context and you're bringing these principles into it. So the context is pre-existing. You have to be able to meet them with their language. I've done that before, and most people look at me like I've got 17 heads or something. Like, what is this? What is he talking about? And so that's why my business has tended to be more just like, I'm just going to share what I have, and then the people that show up are the ones
Hmm.
that I can talk to because that's what they're looking for and ready for.
And that's true. And so you work with people who are building businesses. You are
Mm-hmm.
working with people who are trying to accomplish things that are unnaturally big and
Mm-hmm.
audacious and creative.
Yes, and that also have a really high bar for an internal experience of life now that's enjoyable. So the people that just want to achieve, they just want to perform, they just want to make stuff happen in the world, they don't really vibe with me. And the people that only want to talk about grounding and well-being and spirituality and don't want to make shit happen and make money, they don't really vibe with me either. But for the small percentage of people who are willing to believe that you can have both, that's like the sweet spot for me. It's like spiritual development and growth and evolution and material success, making money. That's like where those two Venn diagrams overlap. That's me. That's what I love.
So I want to build a billion-dollar company, but I don't want to kill myself in the process, and I don't want my soul to die.
A little bit
Which
further. Not I don't want to. It's like, what do you actually want to have peace and fulfillment and love and a great family life, as well as building a
is
company
that?
that can.
And my question to you is that possible?
Yes, it's possible. And I don't
How's it
know it because
possible?
I
I've
have a
never I've
billion
never
dollar.
seen it done. How's it possible?
Well, there's people out there that have done it, and let's just say this. If you're only looking for people having done it, then you're actually limiting yourself anyway. I just made a video last week. It's coming out in a week or two called Be the Roger Bannister, Be the 4 Minute Mile. Really? But because I had this realization that like, okay, Roger Bannister was the first one to do the 4 minute mile. Then a bunch of people did it after him, right? But not before because it was impossible. Then he did it and others did it. And it's like, actually, a human being, what makes a human being not an animal is not the human part, it's the being. And so what we be is essentially a possibility. Roger Bannister was the possibility of a 4 minute mile. That's actually who he was and what he is. And so actually we can be that in anything. Nobody is going to think that it's possible to have a great family life, to be at peace and be a billionaire until somebody's done it. And nobody's going to do it until somebody is willing to take that possibility and be it. Somebody has to go first. So we could go that route, or we could look at all the people who do have $1 billion and live a life that's relaxed and happy anyway. Everyone wants to find the counterexample, but what does that create?
And that goes back to what we started the conversation with, is you're a philosopher to figure out how to have your experience of life be the most it can be, right? So
Yes.
it doesn't matter if anybody else has done it.
No.
What do you want to create in your life?
Yes.
Now let's go about figuring out how to create that.
And guess what? The moment I accept that it's possible and I go about doing that and going about creating it, I've already mostly got it because I'm living in that possibility. So if we can really live in a possibility, then we get to have it before we even get it.
So I have got, you and I had that conversation 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I remember sitting, had the most delicious cup of coffee in Santa Monica. Like I still remember that cup of coffee.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And we talked about using language of creation. We talked
Mm-hmm.
about bringing what is quote unquote the future into the present and living into it now. Can I get you to spontaneously talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if your podcast listeners can see the video version of this, but if I lean my head to the side, there's my door of my office has
the video gets captioned, and
okay, cool.
Most listeners are on audio,
Well,
but we do for the hearing impaired, we caption it.
On the office door behind me that's open, but you can see it on the facing out, is the Aramaic lettering for two words, which in English we know is one word, but those two words is abracadabra. We think abracadabra, magic trick, but it's actually Aramaic for I create as I speak. And that's on that door because it's really central to like who I am and how I think life works as a human being. How we speak actually creates our experience of reality, which creates our emotions in our body and where our attention goes, and then all our actions and behaviors come from that. It's literally all born through our speaking. We are animals, and then you add language and speaking, conceptualization and language on top of it, and then all of a sudden we have this extra layer we call being. We're more than animals, we're human beings. We're expressing meaning in every moment. And so if that's the case, I'm fascinated with how are we doing that in ways that serve us? What meaning creates an experience that's empowering? I just got off a coaching call with a long-term client, and we actually were looking at how the use of the word goals and achievements takes these possibilities that she would love that's born from her intuition, and it actually adds a layer on top of that actually has her move away. Because so you have a possibility, you have an idea, oh, I would love to do this. I would love to draw that, or I'd love to do this business, or I'd love to grow my revenue in this way. And then it's a possibility, you're excited, you're inspired, you feel drawn into action. And then you say, let me set a goal. And then suddenly you've invoked a possibility of winning or losing on top of that creation, of succeeding or failing, which then evokes the possibility for self-judgment and fear and failure. And you take a really simple thing like, what was the example? Let's just make one up. I want to create a new sale in my business. I love that possibility. Okay, now I'm going to turn it into a goal. The moment I do, it's like, oh, if I don't get that, that means I failed. Now I don't feel very good. So I don't want to look at that.
Let's actually make this really real. Okay, all right, my goal is to close 5 sales this quarter.
Okay, cool. So, and what happens when you think about it that way?
I get a little anxious. And
right. That's all we need to know. Right. So before it was a goal, it was a possibility. Because first comes the idea. Goal is a secondary layer of meaning on top of the idea. There's an idea, there's a possibility, our spirit, our vision. We're excited about it. And then we slap on secondary layer of meaning, which is goal. And then it adds anxiety. So let's peel that layer off. So before that, just the way that you use a language to represent it. So I have a vision or a possibility or a creation called 5 new clients. Is that what it was? 5 clients?
Yeah, we've got just 5. I want to close 5 sales.
So I want to close 5 sales. I would even, one of the things I like to do too with language is to speak these creations as present or past tense.
Okay.
So I created 5 clients because the only reason to have a quote unquote goal, in my opinion, is the experience it creates right now. Because I'm living now.
So I'm trying to slow you down to a step-by-step process. I'm going. I'm a sales guy. I come to you. I want to close 5 clients. Now you're showing me where I closed myself down. Mm-hmm. Now you're seeing the possibility was creating clients, mm-hmm. and by saying I have a goal, I'm going to and putting it in the future.
By this date.
5 clients by this date. All of a sudden, I get anxious.
Yes.
Now you take my anxiety away, back it up. Mm-hmm. and go back to the possibility of creating clients.
So I created 5 clients.
So now you're saying take it in the present, and
Yes.
instead of saying, when someone says, what are you up to this quarter? Oh, I want to create 5 clients. You say, oh, I've created 5 clients.
Or you could, the way that I would speak it, if somebody asked me what I'm up to, I would say I am in the action of creating 5 clients.
Beautiful.
Or I'm in the creation of 5 clients. When I would sit by myself in the morning, I would look at it as like, these are the things that I have created. I would actually past tense it, like just like this moment, it's already done. Because when it's past, it's even more believable.
So when I'm speaking to myself, I've created 5 clients.
Yes.
I can see them, I can feel them, I can touch them. When I'm talking in the world, instead of so I don't look like I'm an idiot,
so
my sales manager doesn't think,
right.
my sales manager's like, where's the purchase orders? It's like, no, I am creating 5 clients.
Yes, I'm in creation of, I'm creating. I won't put it in the future.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's actually unfolding. It's occurring right now. And the reason I speak in these ways is because I want the baby of the energy of the possibility and the vision without the bathwater of the judgment as to whether or not I succeed or whether I'm good enough if I get there or don't get there.
Cool. So now it's the end of the quarter and I created 3 clients.
Mm-hmm.
John, I only created 3 clients.
So?
But I failed.
Well, then you're invoking that idea again. So there's a way of seeing, there's a difference between what I want and what's happening without adding the extra layer of that means this or that means that.
So help me turn around that thought. I failed.
Yes.
I didn't create the 5 clients. See, I should have beat myself into submission and gone, I should have done it the other way.
Yeah, so the failure presupposes, I would just invite people to use different language to see what does the experience create for you when you look at it through the idea that you failed. You can just see that that's not useful. Succeeding and failing is not useful. But there's a deeper thing here, because this is just like an idea, a way of talking about it, but it's actually really confronting to consider the idea that success-failure dichotomy is that I can live without that, or it's actually a threat to somebody's reality. That's like, wait, I can't not have that polarity of success failure because I don't just sit around all day. We don't trust that our nature is to create. The way I spoke it with my client earlier is like, where's my notes? Here they are. Is this it? Where is it? That's not it, but I'll remember it. What we said is, we said it this way: goals are getting in my way. Or I don't have goals because goals get in my way. So I don't have goals because goals get in my way. And what is inside of that is the understanding that who I am is action. My natural movement is to create. And I will continue to do that at my highest capacity unless you put a goal in my way. If you put a goal in my way, it creates concern about winning or losing, succeeding or failing, and it slows me down. But so basically it's a declaration, it's an acknowledgement that my natural state is to be active and to be creating. And so I think it takes a willingness to see that you actually can be more productive, more effective, generate more results without goals. And then once you have some connection to that possibility, then you can start to consider not using success and failure as a framework anymore.
You just unraveled 75% of the self-help industry.
Well, there's a lot of money in that polarity, in that dichotomy, right? Yeah.
A lot of money in fear, a lot of money in
a lot of money in fear,
in all kinds of ways to beat people into self-help.
Yes.
So this is great. So you know what I love about this conversation is, again, the rubber meets the road, absolute tangible results that can be, not the goals. So we'll take that word out there, but the results, that the things that we can create if we take out a lot of the conventional wisdom and just be, find out where our energies are, where our creative energies are, what is it we're gravitating towards. But that all back to the beginning of this conversation, to slowing down.
Yeah.
People ask me, Mark, what's one word, what one piece of advice would you give anybody who wants to master midlife? I'm like, pen and paper. Or pen and paper. I'm like, it's got to start somewhere. You've got to slow down somewhere. If you don't meditate, just sit and have your cup of coffee, without your phone in your hand, without the TV on. Let's start there just so you can catch up to life, hear yourself breathing, write down your thoughts, right? And just start somewhere before you can ever get to that whole creative muse that we would love to have running our lives.
I mean, I completely agree. Pen and paper as well. To me, even if I don't meditate, I'm going to open my journal and put my pen down. That's like the last thing that will go, right? I was doing on the plane this morning at 5 a.m. because it was like I knew I'd come right here to calls. And so, yeah, very much
Take my
so.
pickup truck, take my iPhone.
Yeah, don't take my journal.
Don't take my dog, and don't take my pen and paper, right?
Yeah.
Please don't do that.
Mm.
Very cool. So what are you up to? What are you creating now?
I'm creating Creator Circle 5, my next Creator Circle, which is a group of entrepreneurs and artists and musicians that I work with and coaches over the course of a year. I'm creating new membership in my creating school, which is...
I just saw your creating school. I didn't know you were doing that. That is incredible.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm like 10 months in. It's been really awesome. It's, me after 10 years of being in conversation, helping people to create directly, I built up this body of philosophy. And so I'm teaching that essentially. And so that's a place where you can learn, there's me coaching a person, but then there's also me coaching myself, which is actually where most of the coaching happens. And so creating school is where people can learn how to coach themselves if they're not necessarily ready or looking for a coaching investment. And
I'm going to put the links to both of those things in the show notes so people can go there.
Yeah.
I just want you to know you're not charging nearly enough for that coach for your
creating school.
For the creating school, because I was looking at it this morning and I'm like, holy shit, that is incredible. The amount of content there and value is really beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it's life-changing for people if they engage in it, but it's the kind of thing like anything. It's just like coaching. If you don't bring not just your financial commitment, but like your actual time and your attention to it, it's worthless. And so,
So the Creator Circle, which is coaching with you and a group and a cohort of people, and then your creative school, which is self-paced and some interaction with you.
Yeah. I mean, I have live classes and there's an archive of content and classes in there. But it's, this is what I wanted to say as well, is that I encourage people, even if they have a different coach or their own coach, like, cool, stay with that, do that. Like, go do creating school and learn how to create through how you conceptualize yourself in the world and bring that to your coaching. It's like, it's an accelerant for any coaching that you're doing with anybody in the world. You will get more out of your work with your coach or whatever personal development stuff you're doing just through being exposed to this, and then dip in for 6 months. And the other thing I'll say about creating schools, and maybe you can already tell if you've hung with the podcast all the way through, then I honor you, because I know that the way that I talk is sometimes like a little bit radical and like, but if there's a part of you that is like, even though I'm not understanding this necessarily, or it seems kind of crazy, there's a part of you that also is like, but there's something here, then stay with that and trust that. And the people that come in, I mean, I've had a number of people that say, for a few months, I was like, what is this? What is he going on about? It doesn't make any sense. But I had a deeper sense that there was something for me. And then all of a sudden, like, you start to see. And that is my greatest gift. That's what I want people to experience. Just a new way of seeing reality and themselves that gives them so much more freedom and power. And if I can help people to have that, I don't care if I ever get to have a one-to-one conversation with them, but they get to have that and do it in their world, then I'm happy. So that's what the purpose of it is for.
I'm a testament to taking your wisdom and actually incorporating it into my world. So thank you, John. Thank you for sharing with my audience. I love who you be, what you bring, what you create. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. You're welcome.
To everybody else, thank you for hanging in with us, because I know 98% of you, according to our statistics, stay with us until I try and sell something to you at the end. So thank you so much for doing that. I love you and have a great rest of the day.
That's cool.